Yeah, no worries. Why does it look so dark?
I think we should provide chairs.
Huh?
I think we should provide chairs.
You have so many chairs.
We do, we have chairs. It's just on like the ways that this
To sit on chair. Well,
Back
at least have one.
Jim, do you want to go ahead?
What was it? Is it
Yeah,
no?
yes,
It's live?
we are.
Oh, okay.
I'm so sorry.
No, you're good, you're good. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. We're live. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Salatu salam ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi sallam. Welcome everyone for our second of our weekly Fawakih Thursdays. We offer this free class on the heart of the Qur'an every Thursday at 7 p.m. So be sure to join us live or in person at the Fawakih Manor. For those of you who don't know tonight's instructor, Ustadh Syed Omair is Fawakih's lead instructor. And he began his professional study of Arabic, classical Arabic, at the Qur'an Arabic Institute in Amman, Jordan, after graduating with a degree in religious studies from Stony Brook University, New York. At Qur'an, he was an instructor, curriculum developer, and textbook writer in the Department of Classical Arabic Grammar at Qur'an for 5 years. He has taught hundreds of students from various backgrounds across multiple platforms, including online and in-person discussion, and we are really lucky to have him tonight, as well as every week for the next 12 weeks. Tonight's topics are going to be Ayats 2 to 7 in Surah Yasin, and those will cover nature of the Qur'an, Izzah and Rahmah, prophethood and revelation. And just some housekeeping rules for everyone in person. We have saved enough time at the end of the section and at the end of the lecture, so please save your questions. That includes those of us joining live stream on Facebook. If you type out your question, we'll be sure to have it answered at the end of the live stream. And for those of us here, the restroom is located upstairs to the right. And we want to be respectful of those who traveled to get here, so we will be ending promptly at 8 p.m. And if you can stick around, we will be praying Isha together at 8:15. Without further ado, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ومولانا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين اللهم لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا من فضلك علما وتعليما إنك على كل شيء قدير اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد كما صليت على سيدنا إبراهيم وعلى آل سيدنا إبراهيم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد كما باركت على سيدنا إبراهيم وعلى آل سيدنا إبراهيم في العالمين إنك حميد مجيد. So welcome everyone to our second talk in our series of exploring the meanings of Surah Yasin, also called the heart of the Qur'an. Last week we talked about the importance of Surah Yasin within the various themes of the Qur'an itself, and we tied Surah Yasin to one main theme. Does anyone recall what we talked about last week? Those of you that were here. Connection to whom? The Creator. Good, excellent, thank you. So specifically, there are many ways in which we're connected to Allah, but this surah is perhaps one of the best representations of the Qur'an of exploring the relationship of creation and creator between us and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So, as we mentioned last week, the first description that Allah gives when He addresses humanity in general, in the first place in the Quran in which that happens, which is in Surah Al-Baqarah, He mentions Himself as the one who created you. Right? So this is the primordial relationship we have with Allah. The most basic relationship that we have with Allah is that we would not be here without Him. We would not be here without a creator. And so that's inshallah the main overarching theme that we're going to explore, among several other themes within the surah itself. Last week we mentioned, inshallah today we'll give the list of all of the topics actually that Surah Yasin covers, and it covers almost all of the most important aspects of the deen, And so it really deserves to be called in many ways the heart of the Qur'an, because it encapsulates so much of the Qur'an in a single surah. So last week we only spoke about the first ayah, which is Yasin, which is the actual letters that begin the surah. And we mentioned several possible opinions for what Yasin could mean. Among them were that Yasin is the name of the Prophet ﷺ, or one of his names, along with several others. Another theory was that Yasin is from among the names of the Qur'an itself, along with the other letters such as Alif Lam Mim and Noon and Qaf. And one of the Mufassirs mentions that any time that the letters appear in the Qur'an, there's always following that very closely a mention of the Qur'an itself, and so that's why he chose that opinion, or that's why he said that that's a strong opinion. Some other scholars also said that these letters are names of God. They're other names of Allah that only Allah knows the true meaning of, and some said that they were actually sentences shortened into letters. So Yasin could stand for something like Ya Sayyid, in praising the Prophet, calling him a master or a leader. So today, inshallah, we're going to explore the next section. We're not going to obviously speed through the surah, we're just going to break it down section by section. Today's section is inshallah just covering verses 2 to 7 of Surah Yasin, which start with Wal Qur'an al Hakim. And so that's the first ayah that we'll explore together, inshallah. So, this is a common thing that happens in many places in the Qur'an, where Allah begins a surah with what is called a qasam, or an oath. Okay? So Allah swears in this ayah by Al-Qur'an al-Hakim. And we're going to explore those two words individually, but before that we need to set the stage that this is an oath. Usually, when we hear oaths in the Qur'an, Allah swears by phenomenon that we see around us, things we see in everyday life, but maybe we don't contemplate as much as we should. Especially, we find this in in Juz Amma, in the last part of the Qur'an, the last section of the Qur'an. We see many different oaths that Allah makes. So Allah swears by the sun, Allah swears by the moon, Allah swears by the stars, Allah swears by time, like the declining time or the time of day called Asr. There are many different things that Allah makes an oath by. And that's to show several things. One is that this is something that's important, this is something that's worth contemplating. Usually when we make an oath by something that is near and dear to us, right? We don't make an oath by something that you don't care about, you know? If I want to say, you know, I'm telling the truth and I swear by something, it should be something that's important to me. And you often see this in like movies sometimes, like I swear by my mother's grave or something like that, like something that's really almost like sacred to you. Right? You don't swear by your shoe, because who cares about your shoe? Right? It's something that's very dear and near to you. So Allah swears by several things around us, several phenomenon, and in 3 places within the Qur'an itself, Allah swears by the Qur'an. Okay? So there are only 3 places in the Qur'an where Allah actually swears by the Qur'an itself. Okay? This is one of the 3, Surah Yasin. The other 2 places are in Surah Qaf and Surah Sad. So all 3 of those surahs are also, by the way, surahs that begin with the letters. Right? So Yasin, Sad, Qaf. Those are the 3 places that Allah swears by the Qur'an. In each of those 3 oaths, however, Allah swears by a different aspect of the Qur'an. So in Yasin, he calls the Qur'an Al-Hakim. and we'll explore what Hakim means later on. In another surah, I believe it is Surah Sa'd, he swears by the Qur'an, this zikr, the thing which contains within it a reminder or remembrance. This zikr, the Qur'an, the container of dhikr. And in Surah Qaf, Allah swears by Al-Qur'an Al-Majid, the Qur'an which is magnificent, which is tremendous, which is bewildering. It has majd, it has might, it has authority, power. And those surahs tell us these oaths about the Qur'an do tell us something about those surahs themselves. So Surah Qaf, which starts with the word Majid, it has to do with might and power. Allah demonstrating His might. Surah Qaf, as it's called, is known as a very strong surah. Surah Sa'd is, they say, one of the most powerful surahs in the Qur'an. If someone has a spiritual lull or some sort of weakness, that they should read Surah Sa'd, because it really kind of confronts your spirit and forces you to wake up, right? And so Allah calls it Al-Qur'an the dhikr, that which contains a remembrance or the reminder. So in this surah, in Yasin, however, it's called Al-Hakim. Right? And Hakim generally is translated as wise. Right? So this is a surah of wisdom. But actually, Hakim in the Qur'an, or rather in classical Arabic, means several other things as well, which I'll explore briefly now. One of the things that Hakim, or the root Hakama, means, among the different things that it might mean, one of the things that Hakim means is something that puts everything in the proper place. Okay? So hikmah, wisdom, is to know where things belong. To know, for example, in the Muslim tradition, the healers and doctors are called Hakim, the Hukama. Why? Because they know, for example, what is the connection between the symptom that you're displaying when you're sick and the cause of it. Or they know the connection between the ailment that you have and that substance which heals it. Right? So they know where things belong. A wise person is also called Hakim. A judge is called a Hakim, because they know where things belong. They know the appropriate, for example, not necessarily punishment, but they know the appropriate recompense for a certain action. If someone did such and such a thing, then they deserve this. But if someone did such and such a thing with this niyyah, or if someone did such and such a thing and they were forced to do it, then the outcome should be this. So they know how to tie actions to what Allah has mandated should be done in a given situation. That's a Hakim. But if we delve deeper into the Arabic language, actually, there is a certain dictionary called Maqayis al-Lugha. I believe the author is Ibn Faris. This is a special dictionary in the Qur'an in that it explores primarily the meaning of roots themselves. So it's not a dictionary that's going to give you, okay, kitab means this and qalam means this. It doesn't give you like basic word-to-word definitions. It explores roots. So what does kaf, ta, ba mean, and what is the connection between all the words that have the root kaf, ta, ba? So Maqayis al-Lugha is a very good dictionary. All of you students of Arabic should definitely invest in it. For example, the word kaf, ta, ba, from that word you can get kitab, which is a book. From that word you can also get the word katiba, which is a battalion in an army. So what's the connection? Right? Maqayis al-Lugha, this dictionary explores that. So if we go to Maqayis al-Lugha and we look up the root ha, kaf, mim, which is the root of the word Hakim, the answer that Ibn Faris gives us for what this root means is actually mana, prevention. He says Hakama means, the original asl root meaning of this root is to prevent. How does that make sense? Prevention. Well, he says, A Hakim, someone who heals you, what do? Preventing illness. Someone who's wise, what are they doing? They're preventing ignorance, right? A judge, when they assign you, let's say you did some sort of sin or you harmed someone's property or something like that, they assign you a recompense. They're actually protecting you from recompense in the hellfire in the next life. They're preventing, right? There's a story in the Qur'an of 2 angels who were sent to Babylon, and they taught people different sciences that were maybe somewhat occult or maybe somewhat strange. They always told people, well, look, I'll teach you something, but it's harmful, but I'll teach it to you. They were punished. These angels were punished by Allah, but Allah gave them the choice. He said, for what you've done, you've spread this mischief, you've spread these evil spells and kada in the land. I'll give you a choice. You can suffer in this life until the day of judgment, or you can suffer in the next life. And they said, okay, we choose to suffer in this life, so that in the next life we'll be fine. So receiving a punishment in this life, according to our laws, is not necessarily a bad thing if it will save you from punishment in the next life, right? So a hakim actually prevents you from eternal suffering by allowing Allah's laws to be carried out in this life. So that's hikmah, it's actually prevention, right? Mana, or we could also say protection. Why is that relevant given what we talked about last week about when this surah was revealed? Why do you think Allah chose to swear by this meaning? Prevention or protection. Does anyone remember when the surah was revealed? Not after. Before. After Ta'if. Exactly. And why did the Prophet ﷺ go to Ta'if? To seek protection. Exactly. He went to Ta'if because after his uncle Abu Talib passed away, he no longer had a guardian among the Quraysh, right? He no longer had someone who was willing to protect him. The way it worked back then is you had confederacies. So if I was an ally of someone and someone attacked me, then my confederate would defend me and wage war against them. So it was very much like alliances and these kind of, that social structure was in place. The Prophet ﷺ at this point in time had no one to protect him. So the Meccans were plotting actually to kill him. They're plotting a lot. They're coming up with different schemes and, okay, when should we kill him and who's going to be there and how many of the tribes people should be there to kill him and all this stuff. So he's going to different places seeking protection. And at Ta'if, he's driven out in a humiliating fashion from Ta'if, and now he's back in Mecca, back to square one, with nothing to protect him. So what does Allah tell him? Yasin, by the Qur'an, which is a source of protection. Right? Allah swears by the Qur'an, which has this hakam, this protective element, as if to say to the Prophet ﷺ, don't look for protection amongst created things, when the creator of all things is your protector. And what's the proof of your relationship to the creator? It's this Qur'an. Al-Qur'an al-Hakim. Right? So more than anything, this is meant to be a reassurance and a comfort for the Prophet ﷺ, and that's a theme we're going to see in these ayat. This is Allah kind of giving comfort to his heart, the heart of the Prophet ﷺ, that we are the ones that will protect you, meaning Allah and the angels. Okay, so that's the first verse, wal Qur'an al-Hakim. Then the next ayah continues, Innaka lamina al-mursaleen. Indeed you, this is a direct address to the Prophet ﷺ, indeed you are from amongst those who were sent. the mursaleen, the messengers, the prophets. Okay. The Prophet ﷺ is only addressed in the Qur'an by a few names. Very few names actually. He's addressed either by Ya ayyuhan nabi, O Nabi, O Prophet. I believe he's also addressed by the word Rasul, if I remember correctly. And the most intimate address that Allah gives to the Prophet is actually the pronoun ka or anta, which is the same word. Allah often calls the Prophet ﷺ by just the word anta or ka, as in this situation, innaka. And this is a pronoun. Hopefully my students remember the significance of pronouns. Right? Pronouns in the Arabic language are the most definite type of words that exist. Pronouns are the most definite words in the Arabic language. Why? Because in order to use a pronoun, both parties have to be completely aware about what they are talking about. Right? Both parties have to know exactly what's being referred to. Otherwise, a pronoun doesn't work. If I ask someone, hey, can you bring me it? What could it refer to? It could refer to anything in this room. Right? So if I use a pronoun and the person I'm speaking to doesn't know what I'm talking about, then my kalam, my speech, is not mufid. It has no benefit in it, which is actually one of the rules of Arabic language, that language has to be beneficial in order to be called language. Right? So here, Allah is using a pronoun. This is showing us the closeness of the conversation between Allah and His Prophet. That they're not even on a name-to-name basis, they're beyond a name-to-name basis. Right? The Prophet Allah just has to say you. It shows a close, intimate connection. Right? Likewise, we often refer to Allah as well as Anta, right? To show our closeness to Allah. We say Anta muqallib al-qulub, for example. You are the one who turns hearts. Anta al-ghafur. You are the one who covers all sins. Anta ar-Rahman. So we also speak to Allah with pronouns sometimes to show our intimacy. Right? We don't need any intermediaries to speak to Allah. He is our creator as much as He is the Prophet's creator, or the creator of the entire universe. So, here, Allah addresses the Prophet directly, Innaka la minal mursaleen. But really, this is a strange address, in a sense. There's something rhetorically strange happening here. For those of you who are advanced in the Arabic language, maybe you've picked up on certain elements in this sentence that might be considered extra. It might be considered more than what's necessary. And that's two words in this sentence, inna and the word la. So Allah says, innaka la min al mursaleen. And this is not la, this is the word la. They're different words. Right? La means no, when you elongate the sound. But the word la on its own is actually just an emphatic tool. Okay? Same with inna. They're both terms of, or they're both words of ta'keed, emphasis in the Arabic language. So this isn't just simply saying, you're one of the messengers. No, it's much more beyond that. Right? It's taken to another level. Surely, indeed, without a doubt, you are absolutely among the messengers. I mean, that's a very poor attempt in English to do it, but it conveys a lot of meaning, a lot of depth. So the question becomes, why is that necessary? Right? Why do you use these extra words, extra phrases when you're speaking to someone? This is actually part of one of the sciences of the Arabic language. In Balagha, there's a section of Balagha called Al-Ma'ani. And in that science, you learn why we use certain words, why we use certain phrases, what's the reason behind it. Okay? So if I was just to say to my friend Mujib, you're a student, right? That would be a perfectly normal conversation. I don't have to stress that in any way, right? I know he's a student. Mujib knows he's a student. No need for extra emphasis. Correct? But if I say to Mujib, no, Mujib, you are a student. Don't worry. You're absolutely a student. What does that mean? Assurance, right? Or reassurance. Comfort, right? Perhaps Mujib feels like he didn't, deserve to be a student. Perhaps he feels like he doubted himself. Perhaps he feels like, well, maybe I was doing something wrong. So what do? I reassure him. And in this text, or rather in this ayah, not only is there one tool of emphasis, but there's two. So it's almost like a double reassurance. Why is this happening at this point? Because again, remember, this is still in the Meccan period. This is at the time when the Prophet ﷺ has no compatriots, no confederates to protect him. And what's especially a common theme in the Meccan period is that the Prophet ﷺ is being attacked day and night, verbally attacked, verbally abused, sometimes physically, right? Sometimes it's not him, sometimes it's his companions. They're being attacked, they're being killed, they're being tortured, they're being all sorts of horrible things, right? Now, do we imagine that the Prophet ﷺ is not a human being? Of course he's a human being. Any one of us, if we knew that people were suffering on our behalf, what would we do? Wouldn't it worry you? It would worry us, right? Why is such and such a person suffering? Because of something I'm saying. So a person in their heart might feel some sort of agitation, right? A person in their heart might feel some sort of, I don't want to say sadness, because maybe that's too strong, but they might feel discomfort, right? So what is Allah telling him here after the Prophet ﷺ for years and years now has been hearing, you're a liar, right? You're false. You're just a soothsayer. You're just a magician. You're just a false prophet. All you do is lead people down the wrong path. All you do is misguide. All you do is ruin people's lives. Imagine hearing that for years and years. It starts to affect you. And not only hearing that, but seeing the results of that in your companions and their torturing. This emphasis in this surah is only in response to the weight of the words of the kuffar, of what they're hurling against him from these insults and from these diatribes that they're launching. Allah responds in turn with an especially heavy response. He doesn't just say, you're a messenger. No, don't worry. Absolutely, without a doubt, you are from among the messengers. Now let's take it a step further. Everything we just talked about, imagine people hurling insults at you, right? But especially kind of poignant here, the people of Mecca, who are they in relation to the Prophet ﷺ? They're not just anybody. Who are they? They're his own family. So this isn't strangers coming up to him and telling him, we hate you. You're destroying our lives. You're destroying our culture. You're destroying our people. Imagine your uncle coming up to you and saying that to you. Or imagine your cousin. Or imagine your nephew. Imagine the same people who a few years ago honored you. They loved you. They would always invite you to be with them. They would always give you gifts, right? They would always show you mercy, show you compassion. Now they absolutely revile you. It's a very hard feeling. And so Allah responds in kind. Surely, absolutely, you are you are from among the messengers. And then he continues in the next ayah, ala siratim mustaqim. Not only are you from among the messengers, but you are on the straight path. Okay? You are on the word here is indefinite actually. It's not as-sirat al-mustaqim, but it's siratim mustaqim. You are on the straight path. And interestingly here, the straight path is prefaced by the word ala. Right? إِنَّكَ لَمِنَ الْمُرْسَلِينَ عَلَى صِرَاطٍ مُسْتَقِيمٍ. When we say it in the Fatiha, we don't use the phrase, or we don't use the word ala. We say ihdina, and then we go directly to as-sirat al-mustaqim. But here Allah describes the Prophet ﷺ as being ala sirat al-mustaqim. You are upon the straight path. Right? And the word sirat means many things actually in the Qur'an. Not only is the word sirat just a pathway, a normal path is called a sirat. That's embarrassing. My son is interested. Not only are you upon the straight path, not only is a path a road called a sirat, but also a way of life is called a sirat. Right? So our way of life, the way that we practice our Islam, is also a path. Right? In this life, our actions constitute a sirat. In the next life, there's also a place that's called the sirat. Right? We believe that when your judgment is done, what happens? You're taken to a precipice over the valley of hell. The hellfire is a valley. Above that valley, there is something called the sirat, the path. Okay? And it's mentioned in the ahadith, in the sayings of the Prophet ﷺ, it's mentioned as being finer than a sword and thinner than a single piece of hair. Right? So it's very scary. It's not like a massive bridge. It's a very tiny, tiny, tiny path. A person who is not looking clearly might not be able to discern even where it is. Right? As the hadith tell us, many won't be able to see it. They'll fall into the fire. But that sirat on the Day of Judgment, that is also a representation of something. The sirat of every person is going to be different. Right? So although there's one sirat over the hellfire, everyone who goes to that spot, to that precipice, the sirat will change to mirror the sirat that they took in this life. Okay? So that sirat is a manifestation of this sirat, the sirat we're walking upon right now. Right? Everything is going to come back to you. What you did good in this life, the moments of your life where you were a good human being, you helped other people, you were kind, you were generous, you worshipped Allah, those parts on that sirat will be smooth and clear. They'll be easy to walk upon. You'll find a firm footing. Other parts of the sirat, this life, where we were not so kind, and we were not good people, where we scoffed at Allah, a'udhu billah, who needs you, right? Those parts of the sirat of this life, on the Day of Judgment, that part of the road will be full of trouble, full of thorns, full of slippery surfaces, right? Full of hardship. That won't be easy to cross. Unless, of course, inshallah, whenever we do something bad, we make tawbah, and maybe Allah will make that straight. Right? So the sirat is a very significant part of our cosmology. Now, going back to the surah, the Prophet ﷺ is being described here as upon the sirat. He is upon it. Usually in the Fatiha, when we say sirat al-mustaqim, Some of the commentators tell us what we're actually asking is to be guided to the straight path. So there's like an implied preposition ila, which means to, towards something. But the Prophet ﷺ has also not said that he is toward the straight path, it said he is upon it. What does that tell us? That tells us that in actuality, our deeds and what we do, our path is considered straight when it lines up with his path. The Sirat al-Mustaqim are actually the actions of the Prophet ﷺ. He is the one who is upon it. He is the one who, wherever he walks, that creates the straight path. Right? Our actions are only valuable if they line up with the Prophet ﷺ's actions. If we follow in the themes of the way the Prophet ﷺ lived his life. The Prophet ﷺ is described as Ra'uf and Rahim in the Qur'an. He's compassionate, he's merciful. The Prophet ﷺ is described as having khuluq azim, amazing, tremendous character. The Prophet ﷺ is described as always being mutafa'il, always being, what's the opposite of pessimistic? Optimistic. Being optimistic, even in hardship. Right? That's the sirat that we want to be on. That's the sirat that is mustaqim. If we are not upon that sirat, then we're doing kind of like this. We're going all over the place. Right? Our path is not straight. And what's the significance of something being straight? A straight line. The significance of a straight line is it's the shortest distance between 2 points. Right? If your goal is Allah's pleasure, then take the shortest road there. Right? Because you might go left and right and you might meander and you might go in this place and that place. But hopefully you can make it back to the straight path. Alhamdulillah, what if you can't? Right? Your path might take you 100 miles this way. There's no guarantee that you'll find your way back. But if you're on the path that is straight, then there's nothing to worry about. Right? If you continue, then you're covering the shortest distance. And that shortest distance is the example of the Prophet ﷺ. Right? Then Allah continues. We only have a few minutes left, so I want to kind of speed it up. He says in the next ayah, Tanzeel al-Aziz al-Rahim. This is now going back to what we mentioned previously, which was the Qur'an. So here we had a bit of a segue to the Prophet ﷺ and speaking to him directly. Allah is comforting him. Allah is reassuring him. Now Allah comes back to what he made his oath upon, which is the Qur'an. Okay. And what is the Qur'an? He calls the Qur'an here a tanzeel. Qur'an is a tanzeel. A tanzeel in the Arabic language is something that was in a higher place and it was brought down to a lower place. That's what the root tanzeel means. Okay. Something that was higher, it was brought lower. So, what does that tell us about the Qur'an? Or what do you think in the context that tells us in response to what the Meccans are saying? For the Meccans, this is just some other poetry. Right? This is just some nice kalam. Although they actually love to hear the Qur'an, by the way. There's something maybe we have a misconception about the Meccans. By day, the Meccans would say, oh, forget Muhammad, don't listen to him. He's a soothsayer, he's a magician, he's going to guide you astray. And by night, under the cover of darkness, they would congregate by his window and hope to listen to the Qur'an. Because they actually loved how it sounded. Right? As is mentioned in one of the biographies of the Prophet ﷺ, written in English, that the Meccans, they were all for the man, but they were against the message. The Meccans, they were for the Prophet ﷺ. They knew the significance of the Prophet ﷺ. They knew he was Ameen. They knew he was trustworthy. But what they didn't like was the message, because it was going to change their way of life. That was the state of the Arab kuffar. As for the other group around that time, which were the Jews of Medina, they were for the message, but they were against the man. They said, we support this message, but we don't support that it came to an Arab. So you have this very interesting social dynamic, this dichotomy happening in the Arabian Peninsula. Some people are very happy with the Prophet ﷺ as an Arab, but they hate what he's saying. Others are very happy with what he's saying, but they hate him because he's not from their tribe, from their clan. Right? So Allah here describes the Qur'an as a tanzeel. This is reaffirming to the Prophet ﷺ and to the kuffar who are listening that, hey, this isn't just someone saying what they want to say. This isn't just someone inventing nice words. No, this is from on high. These are words that the Prophet ﷺ receives from elsewhere. These are phrases and statements, the letters and the sounds and the harakat of which were decided by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's why merely saying the Qur'an, just to say it, is an act of worship, even if you don't know what it says. Just to recite it is sacred, because the phrases and the sounds that you're making were decided by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? Not to say that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has a mouth and a tongue. We don't believe that He has a physical body by which He makes physical sounds. But the wording of the Qur'an, Ya, Seen, these sounds, Wal Qur'anil Hakim, that sound was chosen by Allah. That was chosen by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is a tanzeel from Allah. This is a revelation. Or we might call this I don't know if revelation is the right word, but something that was sent down to the Prophet ﷺ. And it's described, I'm going to go a little over time because inshallah, he's making sure I stay on time. Not only is this called a tanzeel, but it is qualified by two names of Allah. Tanzeel al-Aziz al-Rahim. Al-Aziz al-Rahim. Aziz means the one who possesses might. Rahim is the one who possesses mercy. Might and mercy. Those two things are what? They are a dichotomy. They're separate. They're different things, right? One, as many of us know, maybe this is the language we're more used to talking in. The name Aziz is one of Allah's names of Jalal, of might. Allah's supreme authority. And Rahim is one of Allah's names of Jamal, the names of beauty. Right? Whenever we perceive Allah, we should perceive Allah with two lenses, with two eyes. Right? And with one eye, we see Allah as Jalal, as rather the word is Jalil actually, mighty and majestic, right? Distant. Yes, we have to see Allah as partially distant. Our iman is not complete without it. We have to see Allah as above us, as beyond us. We have to have some sort of fear of our Creator, right? And that is conducive to worship. But that shouldn't be the entire picture. With the other eye, we should also see Allah as beautiful. Right? Allah is beautiful and He loves beauty. We should see Allah as close to us. Closer to us than our own jugular vein. Closer to us than our own parents and our own children. Right? When we have that balance, right? And the closeness is conducive to love, right? When we have fear and love, we can truly appreciate Allah in all situations. Right? What is one of the things that Allah faults human beings for? Allah tells us, when you're in trouble, when you're on a boat and it's about to sink, oh, very easy to remember Allah. Right? But then as soon as you get to the shore, and you're on the shore and you have a nice, coconut water and walking along the beach, oh, what did Allah do for me? Who cares? But the real mu'min sees both. Right? In hardship they remember Allah, and in plenty they also remember Allah. And the Qur'an reminds us of both realities. The prophets, they have a specific function. Allah gives us the job description for prophets. He says they are mubashir, or they're bashir, but they're also nadhir. The prophets give bushra, they give good tidings. But they also give inzar, they also give warning. Right? And we have to be comfortable being in the middle. We shouldn't love Allah so much that it leads us to inactivity. Oh, I know Allah will forgive me. It's okay. I'm close to Allah. We're good, I don't need to do anything. It's okay. We shouldn't be like that. We also shouldn't be the other extreme that, oh my God, I can't, don't talk to me. I can't even be nice to you. Just leave me alone. I'm going to go become a hermit. I'm going to go become a monk. Prophet ﷺ said in a famous hadith, La ruhbaniya fil Islam. There's no monkhood in Islam. You live a normal life.
Could you repeat that hadith?
La ruhbaniyata fil Islam. There's no monkhood in Islam. We don't become recluses. We don't abandon the world and live in a mountain and just wait for the day of judgment and live in fear and dread. We don't do that. Other people did that before us, but we don't. The Prophet ﷺ, one of the most beautiful descriptions of the Prophet ﷺ in the Qur'an is he walks in the marketplaces. One of the most beautiful things about the Prophet. When the Jews question, is this your Prophet? Is this the one who he walks in the marketplaces? Allah says, yes, that's him. The one who trades, he buys, he eats food, he enjoys food, right? He loves his wives, he loves perfume. He's a normal person. He's not a robot. He's not an angel. And he's not some, have you ever been to Times Square? Crazy people who hold up these picket signs. He's not he's a normal person by all accounts. Right? He was loving, but he was also strong. He was merciful towards his companions, but when it was the haqq of Allah, he was fierce. Right? He would let his companions, we even have narrations, he would let the companions play games. They used to play games. They used to have not a stick game, like a stone game. They would see who could hit the pile of stones. Okay, have your fun. He would let them wrestle. He would let them, kind of have this competition. But when it came time for salah, forget it. That does not precede this. He was fierce. He was strong with them. Allah has a haqq over all of you. So there's a balance. He's not just one, he was not just the other. And then the final ayah, which we'll talk about today very quickly because we only have a few minutes left. The final ayah is لِتُنذِرَ قَوْمًا مَا أُنذِرَ آبَاؤُهُمْ فَهُمْ غَافِلُونَ. And this is solidifying the function of the Prophet ﷺ. So after consoling the Prophet ﷺ, after reassuring him, after speaking about the value of the Qur'an that he's been given, Allah lays out what your job is here. Your job is to warn a people who have not yet received warning. Right? Your job is to warn a people who their fathers didn't receive warning, so they are just in a state of ghafla, forgetfulness. Right? That's one way actually to read the ayah. That's one of the ways. You are here to warn a qawm, a people whose fathers did not receive guidance, so therefore they are in ghafla. That's one way. Actually, there's another way to read the ayah, which I like better. The word in the middle is the word ma, which is a very important word in the Arabic language. It's also the bane of a lot of Arabic students, because ma can mean a dozen things, depending on context. Another meaning of the ma here is not just a negation that their fathers were not warned. That was the first interpretation. Another meaning of ma rather is what, or that which. It's a relative pronoun. It means that which. So if we read it in the second way, the translation becomes, you are here to warn a people of what their fathers were warned. Meaning, they already had warning. You're here to remind them of what their fathers were warned. Why? Because they have become people of ghafla now. It's another way to read the ayah. And this actually, according to Imam al-Alusi and others, they said this is a strong opinion. Why? Because the Arabs are descendants of a prophet. They're descendants of Ismail alayhi salam. Ismail alayhi salam brought the message of Ibrahim to the Arabian Peninsula. So they had guidance at one point.
And Shu'aib, some of the other
And Shu'aib, yes. So there were Arab prophets. But what happened to the people? Over time, they took their religion that they inherited from the prophets and they corrupted it. So their fathers did receive guidance, but they became people of ghafla. And actually, this is more fitting with the word ghafla. Ghafla means you knew something and you forgot it. It doesn't mean you didn't know at all. That's the word for that in Arabic is jahl. Yes?
Isn't the ghafla is like some kind of like very profound sleep kind of state?
Yeah.
Empowers you, like
It covers up exactly.
covers up your consciousness. Like,
Right.
You know?
But there was something already there in the beginning.
Yeah,
right?
yes.
And it became covered up.
Yes.
That's ghafla.
Ghafla, yes.
That's different from the word jahl. Jahl means you don't know.
Yeah. That
You simply don't know.
Yeah. That's the different
Right.
level, yeah.
But here, these people are not called jahilun. They're called ghafilun. So they knew a truth. They had a truth,
Ignoring it.
but they ignored it. Exactly. And so, actually there's one more ayah, which we'll stop with. Final ayah. So Allah says finally at the end, because of their ghafla, what happened to them? لَقَدْ حَقَّ الْقَوْلُ عَلَىٰ أَكْثَرِهِمْ فَهُمْ لَا يُؤْمِنُونَ. The statement of Allah was realized upon them. What statement? The statement is actually referring to other parts of the Qur'an where Allah explains. Imam al-Alusi tells us that the statement here is actually referring to a conversation that Allah had with Shaitan when he disobeyed. Shaitan said to Allah, let me live until the day of judgment. Allah said, okay, you can live till the day of judgment. Shaitan said, I'm going to make your servants all go astray. Okay? Shaitan made a vow. I'm going to make the human beings, I'm going to make them go astray. So Allah said a phrase there. He said, fine, those who go astray, I will fill Jahannam with them. That qawl is what's being referred to here. That was realized. That became realized in these people. Why? Because they were people of guidance. But what did they do? They allowed the shaitan to cloud their mind and cloud their judgment. They went from being people who worshipped Allah to people who worshipped a rock. They went from being people who sacrificed for the sake of Allah, they would sacrifice animals, to sacrificing for rocks. So Allah's phrase became true upon them because of what they allowed shaitan to do to their hearts. They weren't forced. right? In Jahannam, Shaitan he'll say, I never forced you. I just simply offered you an alternative. You chose. So we have to be careful of where our emotions lead us, of where our hearts lead us. There's a nice fable about, forget the source, but anyway, the way that you should think of your heart is as if you were sitting on top of a ruins in the dark, looking down, and you see thieves trying to come into your castle, into your ruins. Those are like your thoughts. You don't know where they're coming from. They're like thieves in the night. They slip into your mind. But you, on top of your tower, you have to see. You have to be careful. Right? You have to guard your mind, just like you were guarding against thieves in the night. As it could be that your thoughts are coming from a good place, it could also be that they're coming from Shaitan. With that, inshallah, we'll wrap up for today, because we're a bit over time. But, there's a lot to talk about, so I didn't want to cut it short. Are there any questions, inshallah, before we break for Isha? Questions or comments?
And if you could repeat the question, so
Yes,
Facebook
yes.
can hear it.
So why, with the 6th ayah, why isn't that second translation used more commonly?
A very good question. So she's asking about in the 6th ayah of Yasin, why don't we see the other translations? Translations, the field of translation is a very strange field, to be honest, because it's not easy to translate from a language like the Arabic language where one word can have multiple meanings. So every translation of the Qur'an is also an interpretation. Right? The only way to capture all the meanings of the Qur'an would be that for every ayah you have multiple readings, right? And that's not conducive to publishing. A lot of other factors. So another reason to learn Arabic. Inshallah. At Fawakih. Yeah, no, it's just a matter of a lot of translators just don't want to make the translations too long, so they have to choose one interpretation over another. Yeah, but it's mentioned in the Arabic tafsirs. That's why, like we have, I saw a picture of someone on Facebook, they shared, they had a picture of a Quran, like one copy of the Quran, and behind it they had 20 volumes, and they're like, all of that is to explain this. Yes?
The story of the angels in Babylon.
Yes.
I thought that angels were incapable of sinning.
Correct. Angels are. The question is about the angels of Babylon, and that angels are supposed to be incapable of sinning. That is true. Beings made of light, angelic beings, are incapable of sinning, but these angels actually requested to be turned into flesh. So it's only when a spirit is tied to flesh that the body actually calls the spirit to lowly things. These angels basically, there are different stories about them, but they basically said, what's the big deal with human beings? They're not that special. If we were human beings, we could be way better than them. So Allah said, fine, I'll make you into flesh and blood, and we'll see how long you last. And they didn't last long. Basically.
I had something else.
Yeah.
Do you want to go first?
Is this story an ayah or hadith, or what is it?
About the two angels,
Yeah.
it is alluded to in the Quran. It's an ayah.
I also read that in the Quran, but where are you getting that these angels wanted to be human beings?
It's mentioned in some of the tafsir and the hadith literature.
But I didn't think the angels could think that way. They were just, Allah created them. They were just created to make thicker or have been obedient.
Correct.
I don't think they had a thought.
Yeah, so the question is about angels and their thought processes. Angels belong to different names of Allah. So there are angels that represent Allah's majesty, His might. There are angels that represent Allah's mercy. The best example of this is when Allah says that He's going to create human beings. There's an outcry from the angels. Right? The first people to say, why are you going to create human beings? Are angels. Why? Because these were the angels of wrath. These were the angels of Jalal. They said, why would you create this thing? So the angels of Jalal, they do have conversations. When Allah manifests His mercy, right? Or when the angels of Jamal speak, they converse with them. So it's not as if they're just complete robots and they have aql, they have thought. What they don't do is they don't disobey Allah. So if an angel is programmed for Jalal, he will never disobey in his aspect of being Jalal. There are angels of Jamal, of kindness, of mercy. They're always merciful. Whatever mercy Allah tells them to do, they'll do it. There are angels who provide rizq, who provide sustenance. The angel of bodily sustenance is Mikael, the archangel of sustenance. The angel of spiritual sustenance is Gabriel. Now, everything has a bodily sustenance and a spiritual sustenance, right? We all have a bodily sustenance that we're given and a spiritual sustenance, but so do the kuffar. So do the enemies of Allah. So when Allah tells Michael, give provision, Michael obeys, even if he has to give provision to Allah's enemies and to Allah's followers. He has no will in that respect. He must obey. Same thing with Jibreel alayhi salam. Right? So they do their function. But they can question each other, maybe. Yes?
Was this related to the Surah Al-Yasin? The angels of Babylon?
No. I just mentioned it in passing. I don't know if that answered your question. But
Yeah, it did. I didn't read about it, that's all.
okay. Any other questions?
This brother had one more.
I was just gonna, this is sort of a lengthy question, so I can talk to you after.
It's up to you.
Okay, well, I was just going to ask for your commentary on an idea that I've had. Whenever Allah swears by something, it's by something that's consistent and visible, or visibly consistent, and it's like you said, like the sun rising or falling.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always found that whenever Allah swears by the Qur'an, it's more potent or a more powerful message to the modern people because it has proven itself through the test of time to be unchanging.
Definitely.
So I've always felt like those messages were specifically for the later generations of
Yeah,
people.
absolutely.
Is that something that people have talked about, or?
I don't know if specifically if they've mentioned about the later people, but I mean, the Quran is said to, Allah says He will protect it till the Day of Judgment. But as if there's specifically that aspect has been addressed, I'm not aware of it, but there may be.
Could you repeat the question one more time?
Yeah, sorry. The question was about swearing by the Quran being especially potent for people of the later ages. Like I guess assuming our age as well. Yeah, because the Quran has stood the test of time, and he was asking if there's people that have actually talked about that specific aspect. Not that I'm aware of, but it could also be because they, the people of even 100 years ago or 200 years ago probably didn't know the world that we were going to live in now, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you told people 100 years ago that you're going to carry metal and stone in your hand that's going to light up and speak and talk, they probably wouldn't believe you, right? So maybe this is something for our generation to do. Talk about how the Quran is especially relevant to us. So, inshallah, you can start that project. Okay, inshallah, we'll stop there for today. If you have any other questions, you can also email me or wait until next week and we'll continue with them. Isha is in about 8 minutes. Inshallah, if everyone can make wudu, if you need to make wudu, and we're going to pray together.
Who's wishing?